Then when I went into investment banking and I talked to a recruiter and I said, look, I want to leave the bank and go work for private equity. They said, Carlos, you're not going to get into private equity because they don't hire people like you. You come from a poor family, poor background. You are at a very good place, so you should just stay there and build a career there. You don't need to go in and open a road where no one like you has gone before.
And now for my next number.
I don't think y'all ready for this.
I'd like to return to the classics.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary familia. Welcome to the JTX podcast.
Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and non-binary familia, welcome to a brand new episode of the JTX podcast. I am your host, Jason Tamer, and do I have a fucking amazing episode for y'all today. Let's get started. This is episode 18 of the JTX podcast, season 3, and do I have a treat for y'all today. If this is your first episode, welcome. Once again, my name is Jason Tamer, and, well, believe it or not, it's been a whole year since I started this podcast, back in July 5th, July 6th, somewhere around there. Yeah, I think it's July 5th. So I want to thank every single one of y'all who has been with me since the start, every single one of y'all who are brand new, every single one of y'all who were in between. Thank you so much for checking out this series. It is a whole amount of craziness that I even had the ability and opportunity to be able to do something like this. But enough about that, because I will talk more about that after the episode. Today's episode is, as every single episode is, very special to me. I had the honor to have a conversation with my brother, and the best way to put it is my brother is an immigrant who came from a war-torn country in El Salvador. Well, El Salvador was a war-torn country. I cannot speak today. I don't know what's going on. And he surpassed every single expectation that anything and anyone would ever think. My brother went from pretty much working almost 24/7 at a church and going to school all the way to Wall Street, all the way to moving to Brazil, and this is his story. Anyways, sit back, relax, and without further ado, enjoy the financial hustler, my brother, Carlos. Well, I mean, technically, we just started the conversation.
Okay, we're already recording.
We're already recording.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, I want to really thank you, because definitely, how do I put this? One thing I've noticed a lot in my journey is that I really look up to you a lot.
Thank you.
And it goes to this thing where it's like, if Carlos can do it, if Carlos could push himself to get to that point, why am I limiting myself?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you came here from El Salvador, and it was around, you went through some war while out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you went through all these things, and then once you came into the United States, you didn't slack off in a sense, because even at church, you would make sure everything was timely, make sure everything was accounted for, and then even after that, you still had your own stuff you had to do. And on top of that, you would learn instruments. You would, like, there was never a dull moment basically with you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Where I'm trying to figure out how to ask this, but
Sure.
what what made you not want to slack off in a sense?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, I mean, I'm not going to say everybody, obviously, but a lot of people do immigrate here to the United States from Central America. And the first things they do is they get very Americanized. They get very lazy with certain things. They have kids right away, you know, instead of trying to build, in a sense, their empire, quote unquote.
Okay.
What made you not slack off when you came here?
Yeah, I think it all comes from essentially, you know, the way that I had to learn to view life from when I, you know, from growing up.
Yeah.
So essentially, just as a bit of background, okay? So my parents, they split up when I was 4. So when I was 4, my mom left, and then we were left with my dad, and then he didn't want to raise 2 kids by himself. So what he did is he took us to live with my grandma. So from the starting point, I always felt that I was not, I would say, the owner of the place where I lived. I was a guest, okay? And as a guest, you have to do your best to not irritate the people that you live with. And I don't mean that in a sense that, you know, people treated me differently. I actually do believe that I was very loved as a child, not in a traditional way as you would have it like in the American context of culture. So like, for example, my grandma, when we were kids, she wouldn't like tuck us into bed or like tell us I love you and kiss us all the, you know, every day.
Yeah.
That's not what we got. What we did get is we got a stable home that, you know, we knew we were taken care of. She would take care of us, prepare our food, you know, like wash our clothes. This is back when I'm 6, 7 years old, okay? Make sure that we went to school and all that stuff. So we were really well taken care of, but it's different to grow up with somebody that is not your mom and not your dad. So my grandparents loved me, but it's a different way because she, like, you know, at one point we were so, I would say, messed up in the head that we didn't have parents that wanted to care for us. So we wanted to call my grandma mom. And she said, no, I'm not your mom. I am your grandma. I'm taking care of you on behalf of your mom. So there was always that, you know.
That lacking in a sense.
No, I would say that
whole?
clear roles.
Okay.
So I am not your mother. I am somebody who's taking care of you, who loves you too, but I'm not your mother. And I'm not interested in fulfilling that
role.
That role, exactly. So because of that, I kind of like developed a need to you know, to reciprocate. And the way that I felt that I could reciprocate my grandma's caring and love is by getting good grades at school. So fortunately, like also when my mom left, you know, I would see like all the kids being brought to school by their parents, and I didn't. I would show up either alone, mainly alone. So that always made me feel bad. And then my grandma, she doesn't know how to read or write. So I felt that it was a good way for me to bring her proud, to make her proud by just being good at school. So ever since kindergarten, so I didn't do pre-K. I went straight to kindergarten. First grade, second grade, all the way to 6th grade, which is what I finished in El Salvador. I was always ranked number 2 in my classes. So in El Salvador, they always, at the end of the year, they give there's a ceremony, and they give out like what was your ranking in the class. So I was consistently every year ranked number 2. And I felt good about it. I mean, it's not bad that I was number 2. The reason is the other kid who always got number 1, he had a mom that was dedicated to him, and his dad was in the U.S. His dad was sending money so that he would get private tutoring. So he had an advantage over me in just a structural way. So, okay, fine. Number 2 was good within my reality and within the way that I lived. So a long, answer to your question is, when I got to the U.S., also, then during that upbringing, like I was born in 84, and then the war ended in 92. So essentially, the first 8 years of my life was within this context. And what that meant to us is, like, for example, there would be random shootings sometimes happening. So where we lived, it's like a hill, but we lived at the top, and there's a highway. And then you go all the way down a valley, there's a river, and then there's another hill. So the guerrillas were in the other hill, and the government army near our home. So they
So you were in the middle.
yeah, we're in the middle. So when they were start shooting each other, and my grandpa had a lot of trees in the house, so like we would get a lot of bullets hit the trees and then fall onto us. That makes you have a weird upbringing because, like, for example, at school, in first grade, they would teach us how to avoid landmines. And this is something you will see in Israel, but you don't see that in the U.S. Like, kids in the U.S. don't get that exposure. So it's like, oh, if you're playing soccer in the field and you see something that looks like this, don't touch it because you're going to die. That's kind of, the way that you grew up in that environment. Also, you get used to a certain level of violence. So, for example, there were a lot of, not a lot, that I remember too, mass killings that the government did by the river. So they would just kill people and throw them into the river, and we would just watch it from up the hill.
From afar.
Yeah, exactly. And then at night, the helicopters would come by and start to shoot at guerrilla guys who were trying to cross the river. And then, like, we would see the bullets flying in, and also we would get power outages between the whole day, essentially. So between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. So it was like an entertainment for us to, and this is the level of craziness, right? We would sit, in the patio just looking down, and then we would just wait for the helicopters to come by and start shooting. It was like an entertainment. So,
well, that's not uncommon though, because it's also, for example, if you go to the Middle East,
yeah,
it's a thing where a lot of people come into the town square when someone's going to get beheaded. That's their entertainment in a sense, right?
So that was the reality that I grew up with. But again, my driving force was trying to do good so that I could just serve the caring and love that I was getting from my grandmother. So that was one thing. She was also very protective, so she never let me go out of the house because she was scared, like, if something happened to me, how could she come back to my mom and say, hey, your son was out playing soccer in the soccer field and he got shot. So she didn't want that in any way possible. So what she did is she just never let me go out. So I never, went out to play. That also had an impact on, just like my body. Like, I didn't grow up running, playing, going out to the soccer field. So I was always a little bit heavier than all my other cousins just because I was always kept inside the house. And this is all the way until I was 10, so 94. Yeah. Then I came to the U.S. when I was 13. And then, we went to live in the Mission District. So in the Mission District, we show up to school. I was assigned to a decent school, which it's in Balboa Park. But then, all the Latinos get segregated into the ESL classes, so English as a second language. And then coming from El Salvador, first thing is, hey, if you're not, part of MS, then you're with the other gangs. So it was violent, man. Like,
yeah, it's especially in the 90s, bro.
Exactly, yeah, in 97.
97, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember one time, this is, we were a group of 4 13-year-old kids, really. So we get in the bus, and we're always wearing black because we couldn't wear blue or red. Okay, yeah. And then this older dude, he's like, probably, I remember, like, gray beard. He comes into the bus with a San Francisco Giants shirt, and he's like, hey kids, what you claim, and then he starts like punching one of our guys who was slightly bigger, and we're like, man, what the hell, we're just trying to go to school, man. So that kind of environment. So I did that for a year, and then I got transferred to a high school that was in near Hunters Point. So also very violent. Like, there were people burning tires in the front, cars driving super fast, drug dealers, metal detectors at the entrance. So that was also very, very violent. And then once I got in, I went to the summer school, and just the summer school was horrible, just because I personally have some sort of social anxiety. So I'm not really good at making friends right away. So
yeah, your social calibration in the sense is not like other people. Or...
Exactly. And maybe that comes from the fact that when I grew up, my grandma never let me go out. So going to this place, I mean, and I don't know how many people relate to that, but it is the most petrifying thing for me at the time to walk into a cafeteria and you see the little cliques in the tables and you don't know where to sit, and then people just look at you differently and look at you mean, and they're like, you can't sit here because XYZ. So that was also very bad. And then at the time I started feeling, hey, this is not something that I want for my life. I need to grow out of this. And I think one of the things to answer your question, long answer to a good question, is I wanted to grow myself out of that situation. Okay. And I think the benefits that I have being who I am. Okay. So I grew up essentially my early childhood up until I was 13 without a mother or a father that were present. Okay, so my mother always took care of us, sending money, but that were there with us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a difference. It's like you having somebody there.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't have that. I had no heroes, right? Growing up Latino is not like you're, from different races. For example, if you're Jamaican, I'm sure you look up to Usain Bolt, just because there's this guy from your country who makes your country proud, and he works hard, and if you work hard like him, maybe you can get somewhere. Growing up Salvadorian, you don't have any reference like that. There are no, well, up to that moment there were no Salvadorians who were making it big. So no heroes, no role models, no parents to look up to, say, hey, my mother was a lawyer, so I want to be a lawyer too, or my dad was a cardiologist, so I want to go into medicine. None of that. So that was bad in a sense that you have really nowhere, no direction to go to. But on the positive side, it means you have no bias, so you have nothing to measure against. That means that whatever you do is more than anyone would ever expect from you. Okay. And when I came to that realization, I saw that I was free. So I can write my own story. I don't have to become a lawyer because my father is a lawyer and his father was a lawyer. And, I want to be a cook and I can't be a cook because there's this high expectation from my family. So I literally could write my story from a blank sheet. Okay. And since, nobody expected me to amount to anything, statistically speaking, coming from a broken home, living in the Mission District, arriving at the U.S. as an immigrant at 13. So I wasn't like a little kid. Like if I was 8, my life experience would be different. Statistically, I had no chances to achieve anything. So the first moment,
I mean, statistically, you were gonna adapt and probably be part of the gang instead.
Exactly. Yeah. Statistically, I would get beat up or bullied until I joined a gang. Next step, sell drugs. Next step, go to jail. Next step, being deported, maybe something like that. So statistically, no bright future. But on the other side of the statistics, like in a normal distribution, you have the other cases, which is people who just go the whole different way. And then in my case, what was good a second, so first turning point, I could start from blank. Second turning point is I really was just trying to be a good person. Okay, no fancy aspirations, no big dreams, nothing. And if you follow Tony Robbins' teachings, he talks about the 6 main needs, 6 main human needs, and one of them is love, another one is growth, and for me, growth has been my main need. Okay, so if I'm not growing, I feel that I'm not fulfilling my purpose. Okay, so I went to community college because it was for me a way to grow. When I went to community college, I wanted actually to be a bookkeeper, essentially just because at the time bookkeepers were making, I guess, $13 an hour, and I was making $7 an hour working at the church. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do double. I go to community college, I study for 2 years. And then, I'll double what I can make, and then I can have a nice stable life, dedicate most of my extra time to working at a church, and that should be fine. Okay.
Side note, $13 an hour for a good stable life, huh?
yeah, exactly. And then I went to community college and I took my first accounting class, and I got straight A's in everything. Okay. And then towards the end of the first semester, I liked the attention that I was getting from my teachers, just because, growing up, I didn't get any attention. Like I would do good things and nobody really cared. And then the teacher said, hey, Carlos, you're really good in accounting. What are you planning to do? What are your dreams? And then I was so proud and happy. And I said, look, I have it all figured out. I want to get an AA in accounting, and I want to be a bookkeeper. And keep in mind, I was getting 100% in every test in this class, okay? And then the teacher looked at me, Mr. Johnson, Dan Johnson. He said, "You are an idiot. Please walk out of my room. I don't want to see you ever again." And I was just broken, I was broken. I'm like, man, I'm just, trying to make
This is my dream. This is what I want to do. $13 an hour.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm like, man, I'm just trying to make you proud by getting good grades. So I kind of like replicated my wanting to get good grades for my grandma with wanting to get good grades for my teachers, so that they felt that I was reciprocating their teaching by being a good student. Okay. And then he's like, "Carlos, you have a talent. You're very good at this. I am, considering you an idiot for just wanting to be just this. You need to think more." And that just, I also growing up, since I had gone through a lot of rejection at multiple levels, this rejection from my teacher was, really painful. And I think people change once they go through a pain that is bigger than having to change. Because when you change, it hurts. So the only thing that motivates you to change is when your actual condition is more painful than the pain that you will go through by changing.
There's because I read a lot when it comes to recovery and addiction. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things when people are trying to recover, when they decide to want to quote unquote recover, is they look at themselves in the mirror and they see the realization of like how they look compared to how they used to look. Mm-hmm. And that's a pain in itself, where you're like, I don't like this. I may feel good for the moment, but the aftermath, I don't feel good.
Right.
It's time for a change.
Okay. It's along the same lines of the rationale. So I took that pain, and, that's another quality that I had, is the ability to turn pain and suffering into fuel for bigger things. So I left that classroom after he told me that, and I said to myself, I'm going to show him that I can dream big. So I went to the library, straight to the library. I remember that day. I logged into the library computers, and I literally searched best business school in the U.S. Okay, a 4-year university, right? First business program at university in the U.S.
Just to be sure, what year is this?
This is 2001.
Okay.
Or 2000 maybe.
Okay.
Maybe a year 2000, yeah. So I graduated in 2006, and I did 3 years at 2001. Okay, my second semester at CCSF. Okay, so then I search for this, and then I get U.S. Top business undergraduate programs, and then comes out UC Berkeley, and I'm like, okay, what is this UC Berkeley? That's just to let you know how ignorant I was to the world. I didn't know what was UC Berkeley. I didn't know where UC Berkeley was. I didn't know that they had the best business program for undergraduates. So I'm like,
House
okay.
of Haas.
Exactly. Haas School of Business.
There you go.
So I'm at this moment, I'm like, let's search all the universities. So then I got, the top paid in private and public. And then I'm like, look, this is the number one public. That should be good for me. That way I don't have to spend that much money. So then I go on Google and search maps to see where it's at, and I'm like, oh, look, it's across the bridge. This should be this should be good. So then I went and I looked for what was the admissions criteria, and essentially just worked my way back from it. So I said, okay, to have a chance at getting into the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley, I need to have all of this. Okay, I have maybe 2.5 years to achieve that. So let's see everything that I have to do so that I get there. So 3 criteria. Number 1 is academics. So you needed to have a really good GPA, and then you needed to complete all the required classes. So I made my 5 semesters scheduling everything that I wanted to take in order to get there. Okay, good. That's 1. 2, it was resume. So I said, okay, I have no professional experience. All I had done up until that moment was working at a church doing maintenance, like cleaning bathrooms and vacuuming and organizing things. So I said, okay, I need to get that in. So I started looking for ways to do volunteer work in accounting related activities. So I found out about this program where accountants do taxes for free for people during tax season. It's called Tax Aid, and they had a Tax Aid day in the mission at Carecen. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go and volunteer doing, work at this. So this starts to give me a little bit of work experience. I was not an accountant, so I only had like 1 semester and a half of accounting. So when I went there, I did what I was doing at church. I was setting up the chairs, the tables, cleaning the place, and making sure the place was running while the accountants were doing the taxes, and people were happy with that. And then after this first event, I went back a second time, and then I got there earlier. And when I get there earlier, I'm waiting, before the place opens. And then the two accountants from the actual accountants, they worked at Deloitte & Touche, which is one of the big 4 accounting firms. They came in early, and they saw me that I was already there, and they're like, "Oh, Carlos, it's nice to have you here again. I'm glad you decided to come back, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Oh, you seem like a nice guy. You did a lot of work the last time helping us arranging the place. That's something that we don't know how to do, so it was good to have you here." And they asked me, "Oh, what do you want to do with your life?" Now I had an upgraded plan, okay? Not bookkeeper anymore. So I said, and my teacher, he had worked at Deloitte & Touche. So I only knew about accounting. All I knew was, Deloitte & Touche. And then I discovered it was one of the big 4, so it all kind of made sense in my head. So, just side stories. After I did all that research, I went back to my teacher and said, "This is what I want to do. I want to get into Berkeley, and then I'm going to go work for one of the big 4 accounting firms. I want to work for Deloitte & Touche like you did." And then he said, "Now you're thinking." Okay, so I was happy I had that. So I had an upgrade in my long-term plan. So when these 2 accountants asked me that, I said, "Oh, look, I'm at community college right now. I plan to transfer to UC Berkeley. And after that, I want to work for Deloitte & Touche." And they're like, "Oh, wow, you have a pretty set plan." They said, "We work at Deloitte & Touche." And they're like, "We liked you a lot, so we're going to set you up in one of our internship programs." So one
thing led to another. Yeah.
But the premise and the motivation was to do good. I wanted to do community service in the Mission District with what I know. And doing it out of, let's say, a desire to get experience and just do good and be there, I got what I actually wanted, which is an internship. So I didn't go there thinking like in a Machiavellical way, "Hey, I want to get there because the Deloitte & Touche people are going to be there." So,
yeah.
So
and I'm going to like try to, in a sense, manipulate to try to get to that point.
Exactly.
No, you were just genuinely you.
Exactly. So with that, I got an internship at Deloitte, which was great. And I have a great story about that afterwards. So it also helped me with, academics and professional experience. And then the third one was community service. So then I said, okay, what can I do for community service? So I just started doing a bunch of things. Like I started doing the clothing drives at church, the food drives to give cestas de comida at the end of the year. I started the accounting club at San Francisco City College. I started a accounting community online.
Wait. You started the accounting club?
Yeah.
I think it's still there too.
Maybe it's another one.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was a Japanese club president, and I remember we would have to like collaborate with other. I think I remember seeing them. But.
Yeah, they didn't have an accounting club, which to me was odd. So I said, I'll just create one. Then, so now I'm creating it. I'll be the president. So, I covered all my business, and then I, applied to Berkeley. When I applied to Berkeley, I went to a counselor, and the counselor said, Carlos, what do you want to do, with your life? And now, but this time I had a better view of what I wanted. So I gave her my plan, and she said, "You know what? Don't even apply. You're Latin. You're not going to get in. Okay? Don't apply." And this comes from a counselor at, City College. Then I discovered later, this is a true story, her son, who was also a CCSF student, was applying the same year as me. So she was just trying to eliminate competition.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
And this is a true fact. You can search it on Google.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's shit like that be happening.
So she said, "Don't apply." And I said, "Whoa, why am I not going to apply? I'm doing all these things. I'm going to go and do it." Again, going back to the point that this is my life story. This is what I write. I'm writing my story. I'm not going to let somebody else tell me what I can and cannot do. So I went and applied, and then I got in. So, that in that moment, it was, to answer your initial question is, okay, why was I different? Why did I not do what I was statistically expected to do? It's just because, I came to a realization of myself, thinking, nobody expects anything from me, but also nobody for the negative, but also for the positive. So I can just be whomever I want to be. So again, going back to, drafting the end goal and working my way back. So what I did is, okay, I want to be a good person. Since they say I have nothing and I come from nothing, I want to be a gentleman. Okay. So what I did is I literally wrote down all the qualities that this person had, and I went to take classes for each of these qualities. So I took a public speaking class just because I was scared of speaking in public. I took a ethics, not an ethics, it's like etiquette class to know how to eat properly with all the many utensils at a nice restaurant.
Yeah.
I took a class for literally every quality that I wanted. Okay, and so I just built myself. So I feel like at one point my personality kind of like split, and I became my own parent, and I started to tell myself, okay, this is what you need to have, work for it. And then, and that this created a bond with myself, with my inner self, where anytime that I wanted to go far from the original plan, like I'll look at myself and say, we worked so hard to get here. You're not going to fuck this up now. So, it made me true to myself. So it made me, okay, and this is going now into the Berkeley years. I was working 40, 50 hours a week. I was doing full time.
Still at the church?
Yes, at the church.
40, 50.
And also as a teacher assistant. So grading other students' work just to, I was paid $9 an hour. So that to help me with the money and, just to bring income. So I was working 40, 50 hours a week. I was also doing full-time student. I was being a full-time student. So taking 15 units, that's a lot in Berkeley. And then like I would get up at 7, go to class at 8, do classes until like maybe 1. Then I would try to work a little bit, then go to the library, then study until midnight, and then walk, from the library to my apartment like at 1 a.m. And then I'll be walking on weekdays or Thursday, Friday, and there are all these parties going on, okay? People partying, drinking, and here I am, walking with my backpack and, coming back from the library. And like, drunken college students, oh, there goes the nerd throwing cans at me and stuff like that. And, at one moment you're like, I should go party too. But then I always kept in my head, what's the objective? Am I here to have fun, or am I here to grow out of the miserable life that I was having? So no, we're going to stick to the plan. We're going to do what needs to be done, because when I got to Berkeley, so goal number 1 was getting to Berkeley. So once I got into Berkeley, then I started again applying the same mentality, and I was searching, where do the smartest and best students from UC Berkeley go to after they graduate? Okay. And then I learned that the best and brightest students go to work in Wall Street. So I say, okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Because they said I couldn't do it, because they said I didn't have it in me. They said I was nothing. I'm going to show the universe that I am something. So nobody believed I could get into Berkeley. So I got into Berkeley, and then I said, okay, where do the smartest people from Berkeley go to? Wall Street Bank. Okay, so I figured out, again, I made a plan on how to get there and started working towards it. And going to a party, it was not going to get me there. So I stuck to the plan. I got my internship, and then I went to New York for the internship. And then when I came back already with a job offer, and you could think that I could now relax. But then I figured out, okay, I'm going to come into this job, and I'm not going to be competing with Berkeley people anymore. I'm going to be competing with Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, Wharton.
Yeah.
I'm going to be competing against Stanford people. I need to come into this thing ready. Okay, so I found this other internship, non-paid, all right, non-paid internship working in sales and trading, which is working, buying and selling stocks at Credit Suisse in San Francisco, which meant we started working at 4 a.m. because that's when the New York people came into the office, 7 a.m. in New York. So I would get up at 3:20, drive to San Francisco, do this internship until 10 a.m., then drive back, take my classes, then try to, do some teaching for my teacher assistant job, and then go to the library, stay until midnight, go to bed, wake up at 3 a.m. every day.
2 hours
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah.
Dude.
But then I got to New York, and there were 120 analysts in my class, okay? And at the end of the training, because they do 2 weeks of training, essentially accounting, financial modeling, finance, and valuation, there is a test. And then you need to pass this test before you actually get to be placed into your actual job. So out of 100 people coming globally from offices in Asia, Europe, South America, and the US, students from the best universities, I finished my exam before everyone else. I was the first one to finish the exam, and I also got perfect score. So I came in ready, yeah. So that's that's why I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to write my own story. I didn't want anybody to tell me what I could not do, and I was getting out of this whole situation. I was satisfying my need for growth, because remember, I wanted to grow myself out of that miserable situation that I was in.
Because there's a lot of things in there that I'm just like, I really want to get into.
Sure.
And because it's true, it's very easy to be like, I'm missing out in life. I'm missing out in having sex and drinking and doing drugs. And I want to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that a lot of that, knowing that I am not going to do this, came also from your experiences and seeing other people and seeing also, I guess, like things you learned in the church? Like, was there more to it than just like, I don't want to go back? Or do you fully give it all to, it's because I knew I didn't want to do this?
I would say it's a mix, because most of the time it's a mix of reasons that make you behave a certain way. So in my case, there was first a sense of morality that I was taught at church. So drinking is wrong, doing drugs is wrong. If you do this, it is a sin, so you shouldn't do that. And then that kind of like held my my fundamental structure, I would say, of not wanting to go that route. But it looks fun, and then you only hear what people say, right? It's like, oh, doing drugs is terrible. Actually, no, doing drugs is very good, and that's why people get addicted to it, right? So it destroys your life. But the first time that you do anything, like you drink, you feel so happy. You do drugs. I've never done drugs, but I assume it is really cool, and that's why people keep on doing it. But people give you the wrong information.
I mean, it really is that whole handle your high, right? Like, if you drink, as long as you know how to drink, that's fine. If you smoke, as long as you know how to smoke and not let it overtake you, it's okay.
Yeah. The problem is that it's all within our let's say immediate satisfaction. Okay, so at one point you will trade anything for that immediate satisfaction, and that's when it becomes dangerous. So like if I drink a cup of whiskey, I'm gonna be relaxed and feel happier. Okay, but if I do that at 7 a.m., I'll probably screw up the rest of my day. So but if I wake up and I'm already anxious, I'm already going through depression and anxiety, and then I'm like, okay, let me just drink this one cup, it's gonna fix me up. That is the dangerous path that you should never go, right? That's what they say. For example, morning drinking is one of the most dangerous habits anybody can develop, because it just leads you into alcoholism. So that's the reality. So church gave me a bit of the information, but I think it was biased. In that sense that it's not sinning is terrible. No, it's cool. That's why people do it. But at the beginning, that held me back. Also, I would say it comes from like the people that I admired, because I remember at this time I also had very few heroes. And the people that I admired were not doing this. They were working, they were studying, they were trying to be smart. So it kept me on my toes. Like I remember one time, this is a true story. While in Berkeley, I show up to a friend's house in maybe 2 weeks before the semester started, okay? And at this friend's house, there was another student from the Haas School of Business. This is a Chinese girl. And when I get to the house, she's reading the accounting textbook, and she's already in chapter 6. This is before the semester starts. This is the level of competition that I had to face. I'm like, look, man, 2 weeks before, I have not bought the book because I didn't have money yet. And there's another person who's also competing for the same jobs than me, and she's on chapter 6. I need to get my act together on this. You know what I'm saying? So every minute counted, because remember, I was not there to party. I was there to get me to the best job after graduation. So that, just staying focused in the objective and working towards the objective is what kept me. That's what really kept me there. You know what I'm saying? And that's the moment that I mentioned where I look at myself and I'm like, look, man, we didn't work 100-hour weeks to get you into Berkeley so that you can be out drinking the whole weekend. That's not what we're here for. Let's get your act together. So that was it.
Let's fast forward a little bit, because I can assume that when you were in New York, it was obviously the same mentality where it's like, I have to be better. I have to make sure that I am giving it more than my 100% against these other top tier people, the elites in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you would have moments, of course, where you were like, okay, it's fine for me to do this. I'm chilling. But the financial crisis happened.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind around that time?
Man, actually, it didn't hit me until the very end. So I joined the investment bank that I worked for in 2006. Okay, so 2006, this is July of 2006. So that 12-month period going into 2007, the U.S. economy was booming. Just because that is actually what created the crisis. The economy was just booming to I would say to a bubble level. So a lot of things are happening. So I worked a lot on actual, transactions that were very good from my experience. We also, and this is part of the Wall Street culture, is work hard, play hard. Okay, and this is different from what I had lived in my university days, my college days. So this is, we work 100 hours this week, but on Friday night, we're going to party. We're going to go to the best clubs. We're going to bring like the best looking girls to our tables. And, this is how we're going to do it. Saturday morning, we're going to go back to work. So I remember one time, like this is like at a Christmas party, and we were just trashed. And then we rented an entire club. And this is just for, our group. And then we have like at least $10,000 of alcohol in the table. And then all the good-looking models who are aspiring models in New York, they go to these parties because they, hope to hook up with one of the Wall Street guys. And this is just New York banking culture. It's not as graphic as you would see in the Wolf of Wall Street, but it still happens.
Yeah.
I would say maybe less drugs, because that movie happened in the 90s. So I'm talking about 2006, 2007. But yeah, lots of clubs, lots of beautiful girls, alcohol, and then we drank so much, and then we we're like, let's just go home. We grab our coats because it's December, and we start walking out, and then we kind of like get lost, but we're walking, and then there's another senior guy who's passing by, and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we just got out of the club." And he's like, "Oh, no, you guys are going back to the office with me." So he grabs us, takes us to the office. He's like, "Sleep it off for 3 hours. I'll come back to wake you up, and then we got to do a lot of stuff." And I'm like, "Fine, man. Thank you, man." We go to sleep under the desk, wake up, and everybody's like cheering, This is like a moment of, proud. People feel proud about being wild and strong and smart. That is a very unique place. I've never seen this in other places before. And after, it's like they take pride in just being super smart, super well paid and successful, and also wild. This is not a bunch of nerds. This is hardcore people.
This is nerds on steroids, but more.
yeah, because they're not doing nerdy shit. They're doing like hiring, like
jock type of like they're enjoying themselves. I mean, obviously they're doing like the craziest shit. But I can assume that a lot of it is because they couldn't do that a long time ago.
Yes, and it also comes from the fact that you get a lot of money. And you're working so much that you justify the spending by saying, I work so hard, so I got to enjoy myself. So let's just hire, rent Ferraris for the Saturday afternoon to drive around New York City. $500 an hour? No problem. Give me 5 hours. This is just the kind of things that people do. Just because you're young, you're 20 something. At the time I was 22. 22 to 23, and then you were starving 6 months ago, and now you're making a lot of money, you know. So that comes from that. But at that time, my objective, once I got into the banking job, I again started to search, where do the smartest people from banking go into? So the smartest people from investment banking, they go into private equity or hedge funds. So I said, okay, I want to go into private equity. And now in private equity, at my time, there were probably 20 funds and maybe like 10 Latinos working at these jobs, okay? So this is like the most elite of the elite. Like, people were killing themselves at the investment banks to get into these private equity jobs. So it was very selective, okay? And this is more status. So for the private equity, you get the same money and smart without like the crazy wild. So these people are more family oriented. They do their crazy stuff, but they try to keep this family, I would say, what they call that?
They have like this, what's the word? It's the front.
A persona.
Persona, yeah.
Yeah.
The persona is very like family, probably seems conservative.
Stable, conservative, exactly.
But in reality, they're doing their own shit, but on the side of
but nobody knows. This is not out in the open.
Yeah.
Like, versus the investment bank, like, you know, the entire group would say, hey, let's go partying tonight, and everyone's seeing everyone.
Investment bank is more people who literally just came out of university, right?
No, you have a lot of senior people.
Really?
Too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I had a director. He had worked 10 years straight, working 100-hour week to get to. His objective was to be the youngest person to be promoted to managing director, and he did it. So at 33, he started partying for the first time in his life. So he was a senior guy. He was making $5 million a year, maybe. Lived in a penthouse in New York City. You know, this guy, like, he worked so much that he just enjoyed himself. So he's not only like just graduated people. It's you know, it's at different levels. So anyways, you know, at that moment I wanted to go into private equity. So what happened is I got a job offer at Merrill Lynch in 2007 to work doing investments in Latin America. So when I switched to that job, that's when things are starting to go bad in the U.S. economy, but I was working with Latin American investments. And at the time, the commodities were performing well, so Latin was doing great. The U.S. was starting to come down. So like, I remember seeing a bunch of people being fired from Bear Stearns and other Lehman Brothers, but it didn't hit us until 2008. Yeah. And in 2008, that's when Merrill Lynch went almost bankrupt and got bought out by Bank of America. And then, but by this time, we had invested in a company in Brazil. And then the Bank of America people came in and said, hey, we don't know anything south of the border with Mexico, so sell everything you have. And we had just bought into this company. So my boss said, Carlos, why don't you help us work at this company as a controller, and help us do, you know, organize the company, do a turnaround, and then we can sell it. So that's when I bought my one-way ticket to Brazil in February 2nd, 2009.
Were you confident in when you were like, I'm gonna buy my ticket, I'm gonna go? Or did you feel like, no, I have to stay out here?
Yeah, at this time, I think it had a lot to do with the condition of the city. So most of my friends had already left the city. This is, you know, like literally, this happened in our floor. It didn't happen to our group, but it happened in the floor. You know, the boss calls everyone, his team, into a large conference room. So 35 people, 40 people. And he's like, hey, guys, just wanted to let you know that John and Mary, and everyone's thinking, fuck, he's going to fire John and Mary. And he's like, John and Mary, they're the only ones who have jobs. We're all fired. So it was great working with you guys. See you in another life. And everyone just walks off the room, pick up their stuff, and leave. So, you know, it was like dramatic, you know what I'm saying? It's like terrible. Like, good, smart people who didn't do anything wrong, didn't do any bad transactions.
Probably like this was their life in general.
Yeah. They had built careers on this, you know, field. And then one side of the bank was, you know, doing bad, and that's what caused the problems, but it affected the entire bank. So that's what I'm telling you. Like maybe 20% of the employees were involved in the portfolios that were causing the toxic portfolios that they call. But then the rest of the firm, were good professionals making money for the firm, and everyone just got fired. So this is how it happened. So by the time this opportunity came to me to move to Brazil, maybe I had like one friend still living in New York. Like the rest had gone to London, they've gone to business school, they had gone to other places, they've moved back to their home countries, some of them. So there was no one else left. Like,
so it's not like you even really had the option to want to stay. I mean, you probably could have found another job, but it wouldn't be the same as in.
I couldn't stay at my group because we had to sell everything. And I also probably couldn't find another job just because everyone was downsizing. So they fired a lot of senior people, and they promoted the junior guys for the same salary, but they got promoted. So that this is a battlefield promotion essentially, and this happened across the board, every place. So it was hard. And remember, my objective was to get into private equity. So getting another job, it would be difficult to have a coherent story.
Because also they don't know how you work. You would have to work even all over again. It'd be a waste.
So to me, going to Brazil was, I'm working in an investment position. I am going to work for a portfolio company. So it is coherent for me to come back to investments after I spend some time at this portfolio company. And that's actually what ended up happening. So I went to work at this portfolio company in Rio. Then after I finished my project there, I was hired by TPG Capital, a private equity fund, while in Brazil. They were looking for an American trained and educated professional who was also not a complete foreigner in Brazil. And this is very specific because that's exactly what I was. So I was trained and educated in the US.
Yeah.
I had 2 years of experience working in the US, and I had already spent a year in Brazil working for a company. So I already knew how things worked in Brazil. So when I met with them, they liked my profile. Again, it was very difficult to get in. So they, essentially, TPG is one of the biggest private equity funds in the world. And everyone wants to, I'm assuming everyone, but almost everyone wants to work there just because, you work with the smartest people in the world. Compensation is really good. And these are smart, non-asshole people. So they're very smart, but they're not like they're not the guys who are going to cut your throat to get your lunch. This is collaborative environment. So I remember for my final round interview, I went to London to do a super day, which is a day of 9 hours of interviews, case studies, financial modeling test, and a bunch of, heavy finance related stuff.
Was that 2011?
That was 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went there, and I didn't know there were another 5 guys, Brazilian guys, doing the same final round interview. And I was the one who answered everything correctly. And this meant, I'm talking, this is heavy finance. Like, I'd have to calculate financial formulas in my head without a calculator, which is very hard. So you have to be sharp, you have to be fast, you have to be objective, concise. Anyways, I got the job, and I was the first employee for Brazil, and I was the first Salvadorian to have, I would say, still the first and only Salvadorian to ever have worked at a top private equity fund. So that was a total, high of my life. Like, this is something that I had started working for since 2001. 2010, I get there.
How do you feel your younger self would see you back then? I'm not going to ask now because now is a whole different story. Yeah. But back when you finally achieved that goal, how do you feel your younger self would feel like at that time?
Confident that what I was imagining, so it's all in my head and in paper, and it was possible to turn into reality. So I ventured into this whole, track, this whole story without knowing if it was going to happen or not. I didn't know I was going to get into Berkeley. Like, for example, when I got into Berkeley, I had applied for UC Berkeley.
And UCLA?
No. I applied. I had pre-filled my application for the U.S. Marines.
Holy shit. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I said, man, I'm not gonna live a lame life. So this is back in the Afghanistan war. So I'm saying, look, man, something grand needs to happen for my life to be worth telling. So I had both applications at my table. I submitted Berkeley and I pre-filled U.S. Marines. I sent my information. I needed to go like the next day to talk to them and sign. Essentially, that was it. So I told him, hey, man, I'm going to get my answer from UC Berkeley this day at like 9 p.m. If I get a no, 8 in the morning, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to sign in. And let's go to Afghanistan. That's essentially
let's
what
go find Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So, I didn't know that it was going to work. And when I got into Berkeley, I didn't know that I was going to get into investment banking because same thing. I went to a teacher and said, hey, I want to work into investment banking. I wanted to know if you could give me some advice of how to best prepare for that and for an internship and to get there. He said, Carlos, you're Latin. You come from a poor family. You're never going to work in investment banking because these are elite firms. They don't hire people like you. And I was like, okay, I'll show you. So that's, when I got in. Then when I went into investment banking and I talked to a recruiter and I said, look, I want to leave the bank and go work for private equity. They said, Carlos, you're not going to get into private equity because they don't hire people like you. You come from a poor family, poor background. You are at a very good place, so you should just stay there and build a career there. You don't need to go in and open a road where no one like you has gone before. So and they didn't say it in a derogatory way.
No,
it's in a realistic way.
Realistic. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so that just means I'm gonna have to do it differently because if I go the traditional route, it's not gonna get there. So that's exactly, kind of like what motivated me to go to Brazil because I knew if I did it like everyone else, it was not going to happen. So I went to Brazil. I worked at a company. So then my opportunity came and I was ready. So they were looking for somebody just like me. So yeah. So if I could look back to my younger self, I would just say, be more confident.
Now, your social anxiety still there.
Yeah.
You still had certain qualities that you felt held you back in a lot of sense,
Okay.
right? How much of a struggle was that? Like having that in you throughout this whole journey?
Yeah. So the thing is, I didn't know what social anxiety was. So I first had to educate myself to learn why I felt certain ways. So like I hated going to parties just because with people that I don't know. Like I loved and I still do going to like a barbecue with my cousins and just talking a lot of crazy stuff and laughing. That I'll do any day. But now going to a place where there are a bunch of people that I don't know, I don't like the chit chat.
Having to socialize, small talk, networking.
Because I like the networking, but I don't like the small talk because to me it's irrelevant. It's not gonna take me anywhere, and I don't want to do it. So the anxiety comes from I need to hear about stupid stuff from people who are not interesting, and I need to look nice about it. So, and that's a very mean way to say it because I haven't even gotten into the conversation and I'm already prejudging people. So when I try to improve myself, I had to essentially work on that. So I'm assuming that the subject is not interesting. I'm assuming that I'll have to sit through it, but I'm the driver. So I can steer the conversation to anything that I want to, right? So that started to help me, improve and get better.
You started thinking of differently.
Yeah.
It's much like you were saying, instead of looking from here to where you want to go, it's more of like looking, this is where I want to be at, working yourself backwards into it.
Yeah.
So you get to Brazil, you start working, like I'm assuming some very heavy hours also.
Yeah.
When were you thinking about having a family? Like, were you ever at that point where you were like, okay, like I do want to have a family, I want to have kids and all this stuff?
Not really, because that was not the plan. The plan was to work in private equity. So I was working for that. But then I had also been very involved in helping the upbringing of my nephew and my niece. So there was a fatherly side to me that I knew I had. And also when I was at church, I always took care of the younger guys. So I would just, try to be a good influence on them, train them for life, which is something people don't do, right? Like what I would do is, instead of teaching the Bible, which is what, expect you to do at a church, like I would have the kids come in the afternoons after school because they had, problems at home. They'd come over to the church and I'll teach them how to cook. I'll teach them how to iron clothes, how to wash their clothes so that they could become, independent. And people don't do that social training. I'll also, kind of just give them tips on how to start a conversation, how to stand, where do you put your arms, stuff like that. So I always had that side of me, and I never I never said, oh, this isn't something that I don't want. It's part of me, and I always had it. But I never thought, at what point it was a good time to start a family. So then I met my wife, and she had 2 small girls. And I'm like, this is perfect because the family's already ready. I just plug it into.
I don't need to do all the work.
Yeah, exactly. Half the work's done. So yeah, and then my grandma, she had cancer at the time, and she said that she really wanted to see me married in case she died. So that kind of motivated me to okay, I found a really cool person, a person that I really like, a person that has qualities that I like. And, I can be together with her and we'll start a family. Then I'll be able to fulfill my grandma's wish if something bad happens to her. So luckily nothing happened to my grandma. So she survived cancer and she has, seen my family, my son for these 10 years. Yeah.
She's seen the whole growth.
Yeah.
Much.
Yeah,
I can't imagine how she feels about it, because it's very true, where you start seeing the seeds that you truly plant grow. Because a lot of seeds that you do plant, they might die soon. And It's not your fault. Whether also the type of ground that you're using, fertilizer. But the growth that she's seen in you and the happiness that it brings her.
Yeah.
Because, she's come over before and we talk about you. And it's that thing where it's like, Carlos really can do anything he sets his mind to. He is the living embodiment of that. And sure, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you've failed in certain things, as any human being does, unless you don't consider yourself a human being, which is, but it's that journey. It's a lot of people don't understand, but we want to be rich, we want to be successful. Like that, I think nobody wants to be in a dead-end job and living with their parents or anything like that. The question that comes to mind a lot is there anything you would have done differently with going to Berkeley, doing certain going in New York? Is there anything where you're like, I wish I would have done this instead, compared to moving to Brazil? I don't know.
No, nothing. None of the major things, I regret none of them. I would say one thing I would regret, and that is just in hindsight, I wish I had a better emotional support throughout my life, because a lot of this, or most of this, I did by myself, alone, counting only on my own limited intelligence. So, for example, when I was in New York, that one last year that I was there, I spent a lot of time alone, just because a lot of my friends had left the city, and I was just working a lot. But I had become more independent at work just because I was growing a lot, so I didn't have a peer or anything to supervise me. I was working directly for a managing director, which is 3 levels above me. And this guy trusted my work, so I was always on my own. And I ended up spending a lot of time. I didn't learn how to deal with free time. So, I'd fill my free time with the same things that I was doing at the investment bank, which is going out and etc. So like I didn't have like a social network of friends because they had most of them had left the city. I didn't have any social activities, like for example doing community service or things like that.
You also weren't dating. Right?
I wasn't dating, yeah, and then I wasn't involved in a community. So what I would do is I would try to hang out in the Hispanic neighborhoods in New York. So I went to Queens a lot, where they have like the Colombians and South Americans, Puerto Ricans, obviously. And then I would go to Washington Heights, which is where the Dominicans hang out. There are a few Salvadorians in Washington Heights. So I would hang in those places, but I didn't belong there because I didn't grow up there. Like I didn't get involved in like a community center. I would do that differently, okay? Just because I think the quality of my life would have been better. You know, I spend less time alone. That I would have done differently. And second, I also started doing therapy about 2 years ago. I would have started that sooner, just because a lot of the drive that brought me to this place where I'm at right now were mainly from negative things, right? Rejection, people telling me that I can't do things, and me transforming that and be like, I'll show them that I can do it. And then when I went ahead and did it, I didn't have anybody to show it to, you know? So,
it's like, what now?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's how it was for me when I started losing weight, where it was that rejection from multiple women and being like, all right, well, I'll prove to you.
Yeah.
And I lost 180 pounds. And then when I do finally see one of them, it's like, all right, now what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
And a lot of people tend to revert back to how they were.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not going to say that's the reason why I gained my weight back, or like some of it, but it's good to use in the drive to push you.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be the end result.
Exactly. And that I learned through working with very good therapists. And, you know, the things that got me to where I was were not the same that were going to get me to my next level. So I had to learn a lot about, you know, serving and respecting myself, for example. So I'm a good person. I've made mistakes, obviously. But I think in the net, the good that I've done outpasses the bad. So I deserve good things to happen to me. And then for a good amount of time, I think I didn't deserve the good things to happen to me, you know? So because I didn't deserve it, the things didn't happen also. So I was not looking for that better job. I was not looking for that promotion. I was trying just to make sure that I deserved my place at the table. But I've already paid all of my dues. So if I'm at the table, it's because I deserve it. I don't have to keep on, you know, working the floor so that I guarantee that I keep, you know, my seat at the table. And that deserving, it really changed my mind, because, you know, I know that I've worked hard, and, you know, any problem that I face, I can work my way around it. As difficult as it seems, I can work my way around it, or find an alternate route, okay, which is almost the same. But, you know, I was always doubting myself. No, I don't know if it's possible. Am I really capable? You know, and then always thinking, well, but, you know, when I did this, that was really good. It's because I was working really hard. But now I can't work that hard because I have a family to dedicate time to. So, you know, I would just blame myself. But then I had to cut that through, you know, self-knowledge and understand myself better, that I do deserve good things to happen to me, you know. And then those things started to happen.
Would you say it was more of like a manifestation then?
In what way?
So, because I like, we talked about it with your wife, where it was like you started manifesting it into the world, being like, you're saying, I deserve this. Do you think it's because you thought of it that you were able to get to that point?
I would say partly yes, but also partly in the sense of where I allocated my time, essentially that. So, like, you know, I would get too focused on doing things for the company that I was working for, because I was just committed with the mission, but the company was not committed to me as I was to the company. Essentially, that's what it was. Yeah. But then I was like, well, I need to make sure that I deserve to be here, so I will continue to do the extra mile work and never really look, okay, is this good for me in the long term? Am I being valued as an employee? Am I getting the promotion that I deserve? Am I getting the salary that I deserve? I'm not. I'm out because I deserve better than this. So that's a little bit of that.
What was it? What were the words you said? It wasn't the not the trendsetter. Either you take what they give you or you set what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I
I think in life you're either a price taker or a price setter. So I always viewed myself, the only Latino, the only Salvadorian, no references, within my realm of people who are like me. My mere existence in these, in these jobs challenges the matrix in the minds of the other people, because like, how the hell did a guy who grew up in a poor war-torn country, grew up in the Mission District of San Francisco, how is he sharing the same table as me, and how is he coming up with better ideas than me? I need to kill this guy, because he challenges that reality, right? The reality where you are born into a very rich family, you are going to get a huge inheritance, so you don't have to worry about money. All you have to worry about is making more money, and you deserve a good place at the table because you were told by your parents since you were little, you are a prince and things will happen. Good things are going to happen to you. If they don't happen to you, I'm going to pay so that, make sure that you get them.
Yeah.
So, my existence challenged their reality. So I always got a lot of negative, I would say, energy from my peers. My bosses always loved me, but my peers tended to not like me, just because I just would work so hard that it just made them look terrible. And that's something I also needed to learn to deal with. I'm not going to lower my game. I mean, if I'm, the best player in the team, I don't need to lower my quality so that the team feels feel better.
Good, yeah.
No,
it's more of like either join me,
and
so we could keep going together, or feel the way you do,
exactly,
and that's on you.
Or change to a better team, to a higher league, and that's what I decided to do. See, I don't have to compromise my intelligence and my intellect and my work ethic for lazy, dumb people. I just need to join the right higher level team, and that's essentially what ended up happening in the last job.
It really is that thing where, like, obviously people are envious of like the type of person, anybody, like if there's a quality that you have that other people want, they try to belittle you to make sure so it's a human reaction, not a good human reaction, obviously.
But it's a natural,
but it's a natural reaction. Did you, when you were going through therapy, did y'all ever talk about, your flaws?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you talked about your flaws,
we only talked mainly about my flaws.
Your flaws. Okay. Was it that type of thing where you were like, because I a little bit more with me, where it's like when we would talk about my flaws in my therapy sessions, it would be like, I need to not be this anymore. I need to stop. And it would be, they would tell me, well, a lot of this stems from your childhood.
Yeah.
A lot of this stems from your mom, your dad, stuff like that. And it freaked me the fuck out, because I was like, I don't have boundaries, which was a flaw of mine. I don't have boundaries. Another flaw of mine was like, I was too intense with a lot of things. Did you ever have that self-hatred, in a sense, of just being like, I don't like me right now?
Maybe at some point, like after my grandpa died, I did go into like one bad year, and there are reasons for that, but I essentially like was drinking too much and I was very depressed. So that was a bad year. I think, that year I do look back at those sort of things. But when I started doing therapy, the first thing that I did is I did a self-assessment of myself. So I essentially just came out of my body and looked at me and said all the wrong things that I have, kind of like a pre-diagnose. And then I came to the therapy and said, look, this is what I think I think these are my problems. And then the therapist starts saying, okay, why? And then we deep dove into each one of the items and explain the reason. So, a lot of it comes from just understanding, yourself and why you do certain things. And then just fixing that, coming to a way to rewire your brain and how to deal with that. So, for example, what that means, that's very high level. So I'll give you an example to show what exactly that means, okay? So because I had been rejected so much, throughout my life, I had this inner fear of rejection, okay? So when I was working with my teams, I didn't push them as hard as I knew they could, because if I pushed them too much, I felt they would reject me as a leader.
Yeah.
So what I did instead is I would work more to compensate for their, their flaws or their lack of ability or their lack of compromise. So I would delegate work, but I wouldn't let them do it all and, tell them, hey, why did you not do this? Because then I felt that if I confronted them that way, I would be rejected. And I didn't know how to deal with rejection. So one of the first things that I had to do is I will never, after that, moment of realization, allow my fear of rejection or my desire to be loved to motivate any of my actions. So I'm not going to do anything to please somebody because I have a desire for that person to like me. I'm going to do it because it makes sense and it's, coherent with my plan. And I'm also not going to not do something because I'm scared that if I do, I'll be rejected. If this is something that needs to be done for my plans, it will be done. And none of those things are going to motivate my actions anymore. So, that sort of thing, which seems simple, you only get to until you listen to the person's life story and you're like, man, you were rejected a lot. People were telling you couldn't get in, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, right? And this is not even like the social dating level, right? Like when I was in college, I never had a girlfriend for 5 years, and this part comes from that I was focused on working and etc. But also part comes from, nobody wanted to date a guy like me.
Yeah, the fear.
Yeah. So I remember walking in Berkeley and the white American girls would cross the street so that they didn't cross paths with me because there's this Latino guy with a hoodie passing by me. You know what I'm saying? So so that, throughout your life makes you do stupid stuff, right? Like I was working maybe 3 hours more per day just to compensate for, that. And then when I switched that, what I did is, okay, no, let's change this. So what I did is I told my team, I improved my teams. Okay. I said, hey, I'm doing part of your work just because I like to show you that I'm also committed. But now I'm expecting more from you. And if you don't do this, it's unfair to the rest of the team. So you're going to be out. So I talked to them. I was clear and objective about it. Everyone knew what was expected. So if they didn't do what was expected, they knew they were also out. So I ended up firing a bunch of people. Having to fire a person is also a very good growing experience because you have to face somebody face to face and tell them, hey, you are doing less than I expected. I told you multiple times how to improve. You didn't improve, so I need you to leave. So I did that. And they rejected. They're like, oh, F you. The problem is, you're like, okay, fine. I'm not the problem. I have all the KPIs showing that I did my work. You didn't. You do yours. You became a dead weight to the team. It's not fair to the team to keep you around. So, and that was just a change of, how to do things. And then my life got better, just from the one flaw. And then if you go down to the list, I had 13 flaws. So all those things coming together
it's like that one thing, it weaves into the other things. And because you're able to take on that one thing, everything else starts loosening.
Yeah. So for example, I'd go into meetings and I'll have a strong opinion based on facts about something. And then I'll be like, I don't want to get rejected, so I'll not. I'll just want to share this. And then the boss would say, I want this done because I want it done. And in my head, I'm like, this is stupid, but I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to feel rejected. So then we went ahead and did it, wasted time and money, and then I was right. But if I had said it, we would have not wasted time and money. So that's how it evolves into different areas of your life.
Yeah, I mean, also, the ego of the other person, though. Like, I think that's, for me, that's the biggest thing that I don't want to deal with, because I know somebody else is going to be like, well, I'm the boss, so we're going to do it this way, knowing fully well that you're logically giving them the reason why you shouldn't do it.
No, that just means you shouldn't work with that person. But if you believe that you don't deserve a better job, then you will stay there. Okay? But you have to be sure that you're also bringing in the game, right? That's the whole thing. Like, and this is a very thin line between of deserving and entitlement, okay? So if you're not doing the hard work, if you're not bringing in the smart ideas, don't think that you deserve better. You need to work hard and bring in the good ideas and being smart and like always be ahead. That's what makes the difference. So what that means in my reality, right? I was going to compete with all these, high elite universities. So I needed to have a better GPA than them. They speak 2 languages. I need to speak 3. Oh, they grew up playing one musical instrument because, their parents paid for their tutor. I need to play 3, 4 instruments. They've traveled to Europe. I need to travel the world. So that's how I did it, So consequently, I speak 3 languages fluently. I play 4 musical instruments. I've been to almost every continent. I've traveled the world. Like, I've gone through 3 passports of full pages stamped. So this is me. And again, when these people are watching sports, watching soccer, reading porn magazines, I'm reading about companies. I'm reading how to improve a business. I'm reading about products. So that's the difference. That's why I think I deserve more, because I was doing the actual work, not slacking off and waiting for good things to happen to me.
But you can't show that you did all of that, and that's where you even have to work harder for. Like, we're almost an hour and 30 minutes in.
Whoa.
I know, crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how it works, man. Before I ask you my last question.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
Just, briefly, what you think would be a good outcome of this podcast specifically, and all the podcasts that you do in general? How would you measure if this was a good one or not, essentially?
The way I measure it is just if I learn.
Okay.
Even though I know that I'm recording and I'm posting this for other people to listen and hear, I know that right now I'm not gaining, for example, Joe Rogan amount of viewers and shit like that. But if I know that I could learn from it, for me, perfect. That is the best episode for me. There's a quote I like from Dr. Jordan Peterson that says, listen, when you're talking to someone, listen to them as if they know something you don't. Because everybody, even though as dumb as they might be or as smart as they might be, they might know something you don't. So that's how I tend to gauge. And even with the past podcasts, it's like one day you're not going to be here. One day I'm not going to be here. I don't know if YouTube's going to be here, but, someone might stumble upon an episode and be like, holy shit, if that Latino man who came out of a war-torn country could do that shit, why can't I? If that woman who went through a whole situation with her family and got married because she had that belief, why can't I? And just all these things.
Right. Yep. Okay, good.
I mean, it's for me, because I've been wanting to do this podcast. It's funny. I go through my Facebook shit sometimes, and it shows me just old things that I've posted. And I've been wanting to do something like this since 2011, probably.
Okay.
And
10 years.
10 years, yeah. And I've never put my foot to do it because it would be that fear of, well, no one's going to listen. Well, no one's going to, But I would have rather do it now than before, because there are so many more people that I've met in my life now, right now. There's so many adventures that I've gone through in my life now where I can speak, attest from experience, from passion, from understanding. And I'm just happy to even be doing anything like this in general. So
Good, man. Good.
yeah.
You should do things that make you happy. That's very important.
Yeah.
Because again, you're doing it, out of a desire. So it's not the amount of people that watch that will make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea that by putting this content out there, you can do some good. So, and that could be one person or 1,000 people. So, that's good.
True. But then there's that other part of me where it's just like, it is a fear where I'm like, well, what if you don't get to this where you want it to be, right? And I think that's normal. Like
You won't know until you get there.
Exactly. You won't know. But it's like, for example, for you putting all your hard work in Berkeley, there's a chance you might have not gotten certain internships.
Correct.
But once again, it's like you won't know until you put that foot forward.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. I'm chilling. I enjoy just talking to people in general.
Good.
It's a conversation thing. I want to know what drives them, what makes them want to do the things that they want to do. Mm-hmm. Any other questions before I ask you one?
That's it, my man.
All right.
Let's go to that last question.
Let's go
I'm
to that
scared
last
about
question.
it now.
Yeah, it's one of the main things that I enjoy of doing this podcast is that every single thing that anybody says on here is a catalyst.
Okay.
And I love that word a lot. That is one of my favorite words because you or me or anybody, we can make a change in other human beings faster than versus they would have learned on their own.
Yeah.
You being a catalyst, what would be the one thing you would tell somebody who's listening to this, who maybe is going through what you're going through or went through what you went through? What is the one thing you would tell them to know, to remember, moving forward from this day?
I posted something similar on LinkedIn 3 weeks ago that I would think answers this question. Okay, so there is a statistical exercise of counting. So you need to count different ways of doing things, and there's a math formula for that. So essentially, if you design a grid, and then in this grid you have point A and point B separated, okay? And this grid, let's say, is 3 squares at the bottom and 3 squares at the top. There are so many different ways to go from A to B. Okay, so if you do the math, and I'll make the reference to the post that I made, there were at least 20 different ways to go from A to B. All right, in this grid that I designed, and doing the math, I showed it. So what I would say to somebody listening to this is, you need to know what's your point A. So you need to be brutally honest about where you're at right now, and then you need to know what's your point B, where you want to go, and then design multiple ways that you can get there, so that you don't feel you haven't progressed in any way. So if you do this at any point of your life, when you're feeling sad that things are not going the way that you wanted them to, you can look back and be like, okay, I'm not at point B yet, but look how much I've done. Okay, and then doing this will give you the satisfaction that every step that you're taking is a step closer to your objective. Okay, now the problem comes, and this has multiple levels, is if you're not being honest on where your point A is, you're gonna think that the journey is shorter. Okay, 2, if your point B is not realistic, then you'll create yourself insatisfaction and sadness.
Can you give an example of what's not realistic?
I want to be a rock star. I, Carlos, will never be a rock star because I'm not extroverted. I would hate going to a crowd and be shirtless and jump on top of the crowd. That's not gonna happen. So it needs to be realistic. Or I, Carlos, want to be a professional basketball player. Well, I'm 37, so that's not gonna happen either. So those sort of things. So it needs to be realistic. It needs to be measurable. How do I know if I did it or not? It needs to be timely. Okay, how long is it gonna take to get there? And then you need to just draft it. Okay, this is what I want. And that's what I would say for point B. Okay, and then A to B, again, there are different ways to get to where you want to. So for my example of my career, what people normally do is they work in investment banking for 2 years, then they go and work at a something entrepreneurial, then they go to an MBA, and then they join a private equity firm. That's the typical track. Okay, I did it differently. I did investment banking, then I went to investments, then I moved to Brazil, and then I got to it. So if I wanted to live somebody else's life and ride somebody else's journey, I would have been unhappy. Oh, I'm not going to where I want to go. Well, no, I can get to the private equity job through this route as well. So since this is executable, I can actually do it. Let's go this way. And then the same thing when I plan to come back to the US and getting to Stanford, it was an actual point A and an actual point B. So I knew where I was and knew what I needed to get to point B, and then I drafted the multiple ways that I could get there. And then I was working towards it. And every day since the moment I woke up, I was working towards it. So if you're doing that, you shouldn't blame yourself. You shouldn't beat yourself up. Just, be honest with yourself and think, hey, am I really doing what I should be doing? And if I am, it doesn't matter if it takes 1 day or 1 year. If you're doing what needs to be done, you're on the right track.
There's beauty in that, and I hope you know that. Like I know we talked about like how seeing beauty, and sometimes we just need a reminder that even though we may not see it right now, it's happening.
Yeah.
There are different timelines or scenarios that you can approach it and just write it out and put it out there and see how you can see yourself to get to that point. Because you just saying that right now even makes me think, okay, well, how can I make my pupusa restaurant in Japan? Yeah. Well, I get your degree, okay, or I could head out there straight, but what am I going to do? Like, it's just point A to point B.
Yeah. And both have to be, A has to be brutally honest. So if I don't know how to cook a pupusa, well, I need to first learn how to make a delicious pupusa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then point B is like, okay, how much does it cost to have this restaurant in Japan? And then, okay, now I know what needs to be done. And then you work your way through it. That's how I view life in everything.
What was your card thing one more time?
The what?
The card that you always had, tech, biz skills.
Oh yeah, I still have that one. So it's a formula for success, crazy formula for success that I wrote in 2005.
do you want to say it or what?
Yeah, so it's essentially it's a formula. So it's in parentheses. So I add my tech skills plus business skills plus people skills, and then multiply all of that by your drive, and that's the amount of success. So that's what I wrote. I would change it a little bit now because that's the how you get it, okay? But first you need to know what success is. So, and success is reaching point B. So, it's not that I got money, that's success. No, it doesn't matter. I mean, was that my point B? My point B was getting money, so I would modify a little bit, but yes, that's essentially what it was.
And you I'll never forget this one time you told me, Jesse, do you want to be rich or do you want to be successful?
Yeah.
So it's always something to keep in mind, but I don't want to take much of your time. Thank you so much for even coming out here, my brother. All right. Appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and non-binary familia, welcome back from that crazy journey of episode 18 with my amazing brother, Carlos. And just to reflect a little bit post episode, I learned a lot from my brother. and even things I didn't know about, like him wanting to go to the Marines. I honestly do believe it is important for us to understand that we have to, well, we don't have to. Nobody has to do anything. But we do need to start realizing that we choose what we want and where we want to be. And even though we choose and decide, it's up to us to build that under our belt, in our resume, in our portfolios, in whatever we do in life. It's important for us to put that in our belt, because if I want to make $30 an hour, $40 an hour, what do I have to show and prove that I can do that? Have I worked my ass off to be able to do that, to ask for that? And the beauty of what my brother did was he has a story, he has the journey, and he has the experience, not just in finances, but in life, to be able to say, this is what I want and this is what I'm getting. I won't go for anything less than that. It's important. And I'm grateful for the knowledge and wisdom that he's just given throughout this whole episode. It's definitely something to contemplate, realize, think, all of the above. Because, yeah, life goes by. What legacy are we leaving in our journey? And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to make this podcast. I'm just going to go into a little bit of the anniversary, I guess. If you do not want to listen to that, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the JTX podcast. Feel free to check out more of my stuff at www.jasontamer.com. That's my website. Also, where I'm more active is Instagram.com/Jason Tamer. Everything should show up down here or in my description also. But remember, we've done shit, we've been through shit, and we've caused shit. That doesn't mean we can't change today to be somebody's catalyst for a better tomorrow. Now, those who are still here, just to hear me ramble for a little bit, and I hope this rambling audio goes perfectly well. I will be so mad if it doesn't. Now then, a year ago I decided, well, not a year ago, 10 years ago, I decided to want to make a podcast. I used to listen to Kevin Smith a lot. I still do, here and there, more just because he hasn't posted his Hollywood Babylon or Jane Silent Bob Gets Old. More of a smodcast he's posted, but anyways, I digress. I listen to him a lot, and one of the biggest things that he would say is anybody can make a podcast. Just get a microphone and record, and you can create a podcast of whatever your choosing is. And I always hesitated to want to take that step. And a lot of it was because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to talk about. I didn't know what to create. Because I was a 410-pound kid who had just gotten out of high school. What do I have? What journeys, what experiences am I able to speak on? And the truth is, I had no experiences to be able to speak on any of that. So time went by, and I lost my weight, and I became a pickup artist, and I journeyed throughout the world, and I did all of this crazy shit. And even then, I would make videos on YouTube, but you could kind of still see on the webpage. I unlisted a few just because they were whatever. I made a few videos about just, I guess, confidence, stuff like that. And even then, I don't think I was experienced enough to speak on the things that I was speaking about. And then a few years later, the pandemic hits in 2020, and I decided, let me make a book. I think I should make a book because I had gotten out of jobs that I was not extremely, jobs in general, you know how they are. Um, I had gotten out of a few experiences in my life that were fun at the moment, but they weren't satisfying in the long run. And I only had my photography. So I want to talk about, how to make heartbreak your strong suit, or like, your power, and how to have your sexuality as your power, owning up to it. And the more I started reading the book that I was making, the more I noticed this is very one-sided. This is very, um what would be the best way to put it? I don't think anybody would really read it. I think that's the best way to put it. I mean, yeah, people want to know how I lost 180 pounds at the time. I could just make a video about that. People want to know how did I recover from multiple rejections in my lifetime, uh, heartbreaks, such. So I ended up buying this mic right here and another mic and just recorded with my homegirl, Sophia. She was the first episode, I'm pretty sure. And eventually, David, who was a guest on here twice. And we talked. We just talked about life, and we talked about the things, our insecurities, and everything we go through. And it started building up from there. And there were breaks also, because obviously life was happening and I couldn't get to it. But I would still try to be as consistent as possible in recording the things that I did. A year later, I am extremely grateful to every single human being that has ever fucking been on this podcast. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be doing this. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. If it wasn't for them, this podcast would probably have ended. I think we're episode 18, right? Like what, 15 episodes ago? It would have ended. And I'm grateful for the comfortability, the openness that they have had with me, and then the future people that are going to come on that I'm extremely excited for y'all to listen to. And speaking of y'all, I'm extremely grateful for every single one of you listening to this, watching this, who has been part of my journey in this podcast. Know that this is not gonna be something that's gonna be forever. I'm putting it out there. But I will make sure that I can make it last as long as possible. If that means 50 years, I'm 28 right now, okay? I hope you know this. So if it's 50 years, that's by the time I'm 68. Did I do the math right? 78. There we go. As you can see, math is my strong suit. If by the time I'm 78, I hope to still be recording this, If I move to wherever life takes me, I will be recording this. If I were to tell you right now, I'm buying gear for more videos. And I am striving to make sure that I can keep shooting with other people. This is my passion. You guys, girls, non-binary, everyone who is watching and listening to this, I do this because I fucking love every single one of you who is taking the time to check this out of their life. So, with that being said, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to just be part of your journey. I hope this series has been a catalyst in any way possible. If it hasn't, I hope the people that are going to come on are the catalyst to whatever you need in your life right now. And remember, we've done shit, we've been through shit, and we've caused shit. That doesn't mean we can't change today. You and me, you who are listening, watching, me who I am here right now to be somebody's catalyst for a better life tomorrow and forever. Take it easy, y'all.